Okay, let me make sure I'm online. Okay, hello, I'm Alex from A.P.Ink. So today I'm going to be continuing my Mermay interpretation. So starting here with the list. So I think today I'm going to try to start on the stadium. So like the backdrop for a lot of these things, for most of these things are going to happen inside. Okay, so I've got a piece of kind of mixed media paper. I'm going to start this first. I'm jumping ahead a little bit. Let me give you the references. So I've got two references, one inside, one outside. So I looked up a reference for, I think it was the Roman stadium that the first Olympics was held in. So this area here was actually filled with water. So they actually had like full-size boats inside here, and they would do like water games. I think they used to shoot cannons at each other and tried to invade each other's ships. So I've got, like I said, two references. This from the inside, this from the outside. I think I'm going to focus mostly on the inside, but I'm going to give you both anyway, just in case you'd like to draw either of them. But I'm going to try with a light blue pencil to try to lay out perspective lines before I get into actually trying to draw this. So this is about 9. Now, I'm gonna go for the center point first. So center point would be about 4.5. And then it's about 11 inches long. And then from that center point, I'm going to try to create cross perspective for trying to line up the various levels. I don't actually know what I'm doing. I should look further in to try to wrap my head around perspective, but work with what I have. I'm trying to be light with the pencil, but I want to actually be able to see it too. There are blue pencils out there that are supposed to be non-photogenic so that you can use them on things like this, not have to worry about erasing, and still be able to take a picture and have the blue not show up. This is not one of those pencils I've found out. Okay, so I'm going to focus on, this is kind of a, not exactly top down, but kind of top down into it. I think the water level may have hit about here. So this kind of center band. So I'm kind of thinking I'm going to make mine with water in it. So I'm thinking I'm going to focus here for how the inside looks. And then for this part here, I'm going to focus on the outside, not to the perspective line, but maybe like half to 3/4. I've got new headphones and it sounds like I'm yelling. Am I yelling? There's nobody here to tell me. Okay, so from the outside, I don't know, this doesn't look jagged. It looks, and this could just be weathered from like rain and whatever. But I'm wondering if that's actually how this outside line is supposed to look. This outside wall. So to try to, I think it's an interesting detail to try to recreate that. So I'm just trying to find, why is it? Oh, it's not centered because I'm not finding the actual center. So 11.5 would actually be 5.5, not 6. I don't know why I was measuring for 6. It should actually line up here. I'm not sure because I was measuring here. So I would like to be able to finish one per stream, but I'm thinking it might take me all the time just to try to lay this out. Which I think most of these mermaids, at least for what I've seen, people are just drawing creatures like mermaids, not necessarily buildings like this. Okay, so to try to lay out that diagonal, I'm debating moving the center point because it's like off center. If this is, maybe it's too, I don't know. Okay, I'm just picking a point that I think might make sense. So if this is the center, this is like 1.5 inches over, and then I'm just gonna come down for the diagonal cut here. Especially because this is cut, but this part is still here. So maybe this was an intentional construction. I don't know. I think I started to say I have watched some things about this stadium, or I don't know if it would be considered a coliseum, but it was more like travel things, not like a documentary. Okay, so to look at the distance here, I don't think this is like center. To me, this part looks taller than this part. So this isn't quite, because I'm measuring not from the top of the paper, because this isn't going to be part of the artwork, illustration, or whatever. So this is from here down to the center line is a little less than 4 inches, but maybe an inch and a half to try to get that like off center gap. So yeah, I am focused more on this outer image only because it gives a better view versus the inside picture. Okay, so this line is the outer edge of the upper part of the construction. And then to try to figure out for this space where the arches might be. So maybe a 1/4 inch over from the diagonal line, and then from that 1/4 inch to, I'm trying to figure out how wide I want to make the arches, but maybe 3/4 of an inch. So here, and then there is a gap between each arch. I think a 1/2 inch is too much, but maybe um I'm not sure what this is. That's an inch. That's a 1/4 inch. There's the 1/2 inch. I'm not sure what that is. But then to use this mark as the next start for the next arch, And then just to measure another three. I'm trying to let my eyes make sense of the dash marks. Okay, so here for the next gap, and then I think here for the next arch. Here for the next gap, the next arch. The next gap, and then the arch will fall off the edge of the paper. But the arch doesn't start right here, it comes down some. I think, see, I'm thinking from here I should actually switch over to the inside construction. And I think by doing that, that kind of makes these untrue, because the inside does not look the same as the outside. Okay. That would work, again, if I was drawing the outside 100% all the way through on this. Hello. I'm good. How are you? Okay. So this top panel here, or portion, has... That window looks like it's irregularly placed from the rest of these that seem kind of set distance between each window. So I think measuring from this diagonal line to remember the height of the wall too, though. And I don't want the wall to come all the way up to the top of the paper. So I'm going to measure down 1/4 inch and set that as the top of the structure. Haven't tried to draw what? Okay. And then, so the top of the structure, but there's distance between the top of the structure and the windows. So to measure down for that before I try to figure out how to distance the windows, I think an inch down from this line. The Roman Colosseum. This is supposed to be where the first Olympics were held. This image here, the first reference, they actually, for the first Olympics back in, I think at least in the 8th century, I'm not sure about before or after that, but they would fill this with water and have full-size boats for part of the Olympic Games. Oh, since I have you here, Ravis. Okay, first, is it Ravis or Ravis? So I don't have enough room here to fit all the windows, but maybe at least this first one and that second one. Yeah, they used to have aqueducts, um, water troughs up on pedestals, I think, that they would use to fill and drain the water. Like, trough might be the wrong word for it. It was like a waterway. They were directing water from an actual water source to the Colosseum, but that it was up on pedestals. Okay, I think maybe half-inch size windows here. The width of them. And then I think half-inch might be too short, but let's see how it looks. How do you say your name? Is it Ravis or Ravis? That might work. Half-inch long windows. I actually don't think that works. These windows look a bit more rectangular than square, so to lengthen the window just a little bit. Maybe instead of a 1/2 inch to do 3/4 of an inch. So to bring it down another 1/4 of an inch. Ravis. I think that works better. So 3/4 inch length windows. But there's a bit of like a divot here between the two windows. And this could just be the building like falling apart, but I don't know. Like it could be right here where there's a gap in the top decoration, but I'm going to put that detail in anyway. I think 1.5 inches. See, to have the gap there, but have it look less structured, so to actually I don't know. So the lines aren't 100% straight, so vary them some. Okay, I'll try to remember that. It's hard to erase colored pencil, but to try to lighten it some. Make it look a little bit more organic and less like somebody cut that. Okay, and then coming back to the arches. It looks like, I wonder if this is a structural thing where they've got one arch here and then another one, but you can't see the entire arch from the other side. I think the measurements that I made still hold up, but I want to still measure down. So I'm going to measure down, I think, I'm debating a 1/4 inch to 1/8 of an inch, just to try to take in the structure at the top of the arch, how much room that takes. Quarter of an inch might work. And then just really lightly. But now I have to try to bring those marks down. Okay, if I start from the end of the paper, I might be able to bring them down going across that way. Okay. To do this backwards. My tips for drawing is just to do it. Keep practicing. Just keep drawing. Unless you had a specific question aside from tips. Okay, so to try and arch, so like round up the tops, and it would just be the bigger sections. If you're just getting into drawing and maybe you're still struggling with it, I would recommend practicing the basic shapes. Spheres, so round things, squares. So like a block, an elongated square, so a rectangle, and a cone. Those shapes are in everything. If you break the human body down, you can find the simple shapes in the human form, in animals, in cars. Okay, I think to try to make this a little bit easier and to try to maybe hopefully have the arch the same on all of them, I'm going to measure down, I think, a 1/4 inch from the top line here. Okay, and then my measurement here, this one is definitely bigger. This is like 3/4 of an inch. That's a little over a 1/2 inch. I could fix it, or I could just keep going. I think I'm just going to keep going. What I could also do to try to keep my arch uniform is to try to find the center point. This is a bit of an unnecessary step because I'm just trying to arch it that way. But if yeah, because I'm just trying to kind of connect the dots here. So just like that. Okay, and then to try to set up this inner arch, I think, but I can't, excuse me, I can't tell if these arches are right up against these other arches or if there's distance between. What do I draw usually? Um, I don't know. I kind of draw whatever pops into my head. Regardless of distance, you can still see the second set of arches, so maybe to measure down a 1/2 inch from the top of the first arch. And then, because there is, I don't know if that's another type of brick or tile, to try to create that intersection of wall. So we'll say, whoops, we'll say that this is the top of that other brick or whatever it is. And then I think to measure down, I think a 1/4 of an inch, and that's going to be where the next arch goes, starts. So because this is not a flat surface, it is rounded. You can see some of the support for the arch, but I think for this, I'm just going to put the arch in, the inner arch. So just really lightly so we can get the top of the arch. I think from that line to measure down a 1/4 of an inch to for where the arch will kind of start from. And then just around the sides. Okay, so maybe it's confusing, but hopefully I can make it make sense when I get into coloring this. I'm going to sharpen my pencil though. The tip broke, so let me try that again. I found some broken core. Let's see if how far I can eat the pencil to get past it. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get into coloring it this stream. It depends on how long it takes me to lay this out. This might be a 2-stream artwork. Okay. Zooming back out and looking at the reference, I messed this up. So what I'm going to try to do, so this section here is supposed to be this section here. I'm not going to erase the arches. I'm going to try to erase the windows and try to shrink them some and try to put in this section here, here. Because I don't think I said this. I'm not trying to 100% recreate this here. I mean, maybe at some point I might try to do that. I'm just trying to get the feel of this structure. So, like I said, it's kind of hard to erase colored pencil. Okay, so from here to put in this line, I think a 1/2 inch from the top of the arches up for that line of doors and windows. Now, this breaks across all the way, so no longer following this diagonal line. Which, yeah, I can actually continue these arches all the way across. I'm not sure. I think because I started here is why I didn't to begin with. So we'll carry this line all the way across. And then I'll have to figure out continuing the arches all the way across. But I want to try to finish this first. Trying to eyeball where this gap is. The windows and doors on this line are regular, so regularly spaced. The distribution does not look regular though. Like it looks window, window, window. I think door, 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 window, door, window, window. But I think every half inch. So I'm just gonna mark every half inch and then come back and either put a door or a window. I'm just thinking, I've got this spanning the entire width of the paper, and I want to actually be able to see the outer wall. So I I think I'm gonna cut this arch off and try to put in the outer wall. So measuring in a half inch, measuring in a half inch. I should have done this to begin with, I wasn't thinking. I am not a professional paper crafter. Can I teach you how to drink water? No. I'm just trying to figure how to make this make sense, because this is cylindrical. So I can only see this part of the outside wall, and this only shows part of it. So if I continue this kind of diagonal cut in the wall, it would wrap around. Okay, give me a minute. Like, I'm gonna do this part of this part as the outer wall here, so you can see like the top section, but I want to be able to see like the pool inside. Like, I could from here down try to show like the the outer section of the wall, so you can see some of the inner and some of the outer, and still see like where the water. I do what without instructions? I figure it out. So I just measured over 2 inches, and I'm gonna just bring the wall down. So this is now part of the outer wall. So this might actually change the structure of the Colosseum, but I don't know what the entire building looks like. If it's like this on both sides or just one side where it's cut diagonal. But I think to try and enforce that cut rock look, I'm just gonna eyeball for where maybe you'd be able to see this cut edge. Okay, so continuing with this line here that I made for that upper section, this section here, I'm going to use this for this top kind of center detail. I know I erased it, but you can still see it anyway. And then to add that boxy element here, with that box element kind of overlaps the cut section here. Just trying to figure how big I should make that. I think a 1/2 inch would be overkill, but a 1/4 inch looks like it's too small. Maybe here. And then I think I'm going to measure down a 1/4 inch for this center detail. Zooming in here and there, there's no cut edge here. It looks intentional, so this has to be intentional. Which I know I've said that before because this looks smooth, this line. But I think if there was supposed to be more here, you'd be able to see like the broken, jagged, broken stone. I think for the size I'm working at here, I think it's gonna look too busy if I try to add all of these kind of creases, the high points and low points in the stone. But to try and put in this detail, I'm not sure what it's called, but I'm going to measure down, I think, 1/8 of an inch from this baseline underneath the square block. I think a 1/16 of an inch instead of an 1/8 of an inch. And then I think to mark every other 1/16 of an inch, I'm tempted to color these in with the colored pencil, but I want to go in with ink, and this is going to be hard enough to try to erase. Okay, so there's like, I was gonna say, well, I mean, there is this kind of post detail kind of built in to the wall in what looks like regular increments, but because this is supposed to be rounded, the distance between this block and the post, I think, would either be right on this edge or it would be just after. But there is a post right under this block. But before I can put that in, there are regular incremental blocks going along the bottom here. Before I put that in, because it's going to start here and go that way. But I want to make sure that the post under this comes, I'm going to use this to mark the first block. So from this line, I'm going to measure up I think 1/8 of an inch. And then to put that block in, because of the size that I'm drawing it here, I'm not going to be able to make it clear for the detail at the top of the pillar underneath this block. So I'm just going to put in a straight pillar on the top and the bottom. Okay, so just on this side of the wall, there are pillars on either side of the arches. Pillars on blocks. I think I'm going to make the top and bottom of the pillars blocks. Making the width of the blocks or height of the blocks 1/8 of an inch. So at least from this side of the wall, the outer side of the wall, there is a kind of resting point for the arch where it kind of bumps out. So for where I marked for the start of the arch, I'm gonna just bump it out a little bit. And then even though this is going to be like on the round, you'll still be able to see at least the start of the next arch. Okay, going back to the inside. So I've already got it marked out every ½ inch. And I think I'm going to use those tick marks as the center of either a window or a door. And I think because there is space between each opening, maybe to have, I think, a ½ inch. But I think to accommodate the windows, I'm going to measure up from the bottom. A ½ inch, or a 1/8 of an inch. And then I'm just gonna try to lightly so that would be where the bottom of the windows are gonna be. Let me sharpen this again. Try to get finer details for the windows and excuse me, for the windows and doors. I've got more broken core though. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong tick marks. I was trying to figure out what was wrong with my measurements. Okay, I had said, I think an 1/8 of an inch, but I'm thinking that looks kind of too narrow. So I'm going to bump it out to 1/4 inch. Okay, keeping the windows and doors in line with this. I found more broken core. Hang on. To accommodate the top of the windows and doors, I'm going to measure down 1/8 of an inch. And then just really lightly bring that across. So I'm just randomly putting in either doors or windows. Okay. This has taken me longer than I thought. I was hoping to at least finish the construction of this. I'm kind of not even halfway, but I have to stop this one here. I've run out of time. If you'd like to see the continuation and hopefully finish of this, please make sure that you're following me and that your notifications are turned on so that you're notified for the next time I go live. Hopefully you can kind of see what I'm trying to get at, aside from the references that were there. But yeah, thanks Ravis and Kasha, Kosh, for jumping in the chat. Thank you to anybody else who watched or watches. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.